What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Tuesday, July 5th, 2016, getting into the week, just having the day after the 4th of July, Independence Day holiday. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. I'm sure you understand why. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, and ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Now, to nobody's surprise, FBI Director Comey came on out today and announced they are not recommending any charges be filed against Hillary Clinton. And it was one of the most bizarre speeches I've ever heard. Because basically, Comey's entire justification for saying no charges is that Hillary did not intend to do wrong, except that Title 18 does not require malicious intent. You can violate Title 18 through carelessness and negligence and be prosecuted. And basically, Comey did reveal Hillary did not, in fact, turn over all work-related emails. She did send and receive classified information on her private server that was classified when she received it. They took inadequate steps to guarantee that as servers were replaced, that the hard drives on the old ones were properly wiped. But Comey's entire justification is she didn't mean to do wrong. Therefore, we're going to let her go. Now, at this point, of course, we understand the FBI is not actually the swell bunch of people you see in film and TV. And they never really have been. Now, we immediately ran a poll on our website. Do you believe FBI Director Comey when he says there is no reason to prosecute Hillary? 99% no. Nobody is buying this. Now, Hillary and her people are still thinking about lawyers. But this is an election season, and politics is perception. And what Director Comey just did is reinforce the perception there's a major cover-up going on here. Now, of course, from Hillary's camp, they're already out there saying, well, if the FBI didn't recommend charges, then she has not broken any laws. And we should all treat her as if she's completely, perfectly innocent. Now, this is absolutely absurd. 1/3 of all murders in the United States remain unsolved, but nobody doubts the murders did happen. But just for the sake of argument, let's say that FBI Director Comey is right, and this whole email server security situation was all about stupidity and reckless behavior on the part of Hillary. So you need to ask yourself right now, do we need a president that stupid and that reckless holding the keys to the nuclear weapons? Now, you think about that one for a moment. We're going to take a phone call. Randy in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I'd like to put forward a call to Rivero's Rangers. Is that we need 30 people to send you one silver dime each. And then you can send it to Comey, because I think that he's pretty much earned his 30 pieces of silver.
I think that's definitely a good point. I mean, he may be seeing himself as FBI Director for life like J. Edgar Hoover, or he and Loretta Lynch may just have decided that they didn't want to wind up in Fort Marcy Park. But obviously, Loretta Lynch and Comey's price was met. Remember, I've been saying all along, Hillary Clinton can blackmail the entire FBI over their part in the cover-up of the murder of White House Deputy Counsel Vince Foster and a bunch of other stuff, Ron Brown and the rest of it. The FBI are not about solving crimes. They're about protecting the administration. Remember when Frederick Whitehurst went public some years ago saying the FBI's crime lab routinely altered the results of their tests to favor the prosecution and put innocent people in jail. That's the reality of the FBI.
Yeah, but I think that this is going to blow back on them very badly. I will say one thing about Comey. For saying that someone is innocent in the way that he said it would be like if my wife caught me in bed with another woman, and I sat there and said, well, no, there's nothing really going on here. I think that she would probably not believe me, and I think that that's about the same sort of defense he gave Hillary.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing about his speech. He listed all these things they found, most of which are Title 18 felony violations. And his entire justification for not recommending charges is they found no evidence she intended to do wrong. But Title 18 does not require criminal intent. You can violate Title 18 through negligence and carelessness, and Comey basically came on out and said that's what Hillary did, at the very least.
Well, they need to go ahead and issue a pardon and an apology to Petraeus.
And not just him. We've got another example of somebody who was convicted on doing exactly what Hillary Clinton did. But in their case, we're going to prosecute. I mean, basically, Director Comey and Hillary have sent a message that Hillary is too big to jail. She must be protected. You will love the Empress Hillary. But you're right, it's going to backflash because this is going to enrage the American people who've had it up to here with cover-ups and crimes. And
it would be like, this whole thing with Comey, it's like, there's a massive turd in the punch bowl, but he's telling us, hey, it's okay to drink.
Yeah, just drink around it.
Yeah. That's about all I got to say today.
All right, well, thank you very much, and we're going to let you go here. Article coming out of Fox News, no less. John Fund saying that had Director Comey taken questions after his statement, which he did not, there are some questions that would have been asked, where Comey said anyone in Hillary Clinton's position would have at least faced administrative or other sanctions for the behavior. Why wasn't it done? Comey said the handling of top-secret classified information by Hillary Clinton and aides was extremely careless. And Title 18 does allow gross negligence as grounds for prosecution. Comey basically came on out and validated all that we have concluded based on the public record and then turned around and said, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay for Hillary to do this kind of stuff. And the reaction that I've seen is anger. People are just absolutely furious. They are convinced they're seeing another one of these government cover-ups here. Now, Hillary Clinton's email operation, based on the publicly revealed records, she violated at least 6 criminal laws. And she should be prosecuted. And once again, the FBI is acting as the protectors of the Clintons. Hillary Clinton violated Title 18, Section 2232, destruction or removal of property to prevent seizure. And she violated, Title 18, Section 1512, tampering with a witness, victim, or an informant. Title 18, Section 1519, destruction, alteration, or falsification of records in federal investigations. Title 18, Section 1519. Oh, I'm sorry, I just said that one. Title 18, Section 2071, concealment or removal or mutilation generally. And let's see, Title 18, Section 641, public money, property, or records. Title 18, Section 793, gathering, transmitting, or losing defense information. Now remember, we've got her cold on Section 793 because of that email Hillary Clinton sent to Jacob Sullivan ordering him to strip the classification headings off a document and send it to her by non-secure means. And it doesn't matter why she did it. It doesn't matter what was in the document. It doesn't even matter if Jacob Sullivan refused to do it. The issuance of that order is the felony violation. And Director Comey seems to think, well, this is okay. I mean, she didn't mean harm. Now, the State Department is already out there firing back because to protect Hillary, Comey basically came on out and painted a picture of, well, everybody at the State Department was being reckless and careless. Hillary was no worse than anybody else, and the State Department's already come out and said, we reject Comey's suggestion of institutional lax security. So the fingers are pointing, and this is going to have all kinds of problems. ABC 8 over in Virginia ran a poll, said 82% Hillary Clinton should be criminally prosecuted. We're going to take a phone call. Charles in St. Petersburg, Florida. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
What is I'm trying to think of the guy in Arkansas that was that taught Bill and Hillary all their thing. He was in Special Forces. God, I'm trying to... Larry Nichols.
Larry Nichols, yes.
Yeah, Larry Nichols said he's been on Alex Jones recently, and he's been saying the Clintons just have the dirt on everybody.
That's right, they do.
That's the reason they're not moving.
That's absolutely right. And we've been hearing for months now through various sources that Hillary Clinton has sent a message that if she is not made the President of the United States of America, she's going to start ruining careers and possibly bring down the entire federal government. At this point, bringing down the entire federal government would be preferable to having Hillary in that Oval Office. When you look at all the things that she has done to get that power, it's an indicator of what she's going to do with that power once she has it.
Look up Hillary's genealogy. She comes from the Rodham de Grey family. Very powerful, aristocratic, right back to Margaret Rodham de Grey. And born 1571.
I don't know how much focus we should put on that. I mean, we need to look at what Hillary is doing today, what she and Bill Clinton have been doing for the last quarter of a century. And the evidence is out there. I mean, especially the one about Title 18, Section 793. The evidence is out there that she should be charged for that crime. Comey is executing a cover-up. The FBI is protecting the Clintons once again because the Clintons can blackmail the FBI over their role in previous Clinton cover-ups.
But do you think Paul Ryan or McConnell or any of these rhinos or in Congress are going to do anything? They won't do anything.
No, they're banding together to get Trump out of that GOP nomination.
Right.
Because they want to put somebody in as the GOP nominee that Hillary can steamroller over. And even Hillary's worst enemies are protecting her right now just out of concern for their own office and their own paycheck and the perks. They're thinking their own self-interest for which they are willing to sell this country into absolute dictatorship.
Sure. I mean, during when Obama, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell gave him everything he wanted and billions more he didn't even ask for.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no difference between the two parties except the colors and the decoration. That's it. They're all a bunch of sociopathic money junkies. And that's what's going on. Anyway, listen, we've got a bunch of calls waiting here. Charles, thank you very much for the phone call. Let's switch over to Joanne in Wyoming. Aloha, Joanne. What's on your mind?
Michael, this whole thing with the FBI and the Hillary Clinton indictment not going down has really upset me. And I'm thinking, is there any hope? Do we have any hope? Is anything ever going to be done in this country for the righteous people?
Not within the system. The system is out to protect itself. It's totally corrupt top to bottom. We're going to have to wait it out and let it tear itself apart the way the old Soviet Union did.
Okay, so the other thing, from what I understand, that she went to Barack, and I guess she's got dirt on everybody.
She's got, yeah. She and Bill Clinton know where all the dead bodies are buried and how they got to be dead bodies.
And she said that she would bring the whole country down if she wasn't made to be the President of the United States. Now, my opinion is bring it down. It needs to be restarted. Everything is such a lie.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, the other thing I want to tell you, I want to talk one moment about Fast and Furious. I live in Mexico, and about 4 years ago, I was walking down to the plaza. It was like only 3 or 4 blocks. And we happened to walk by a cop shop, which we did every day. And on that particular day, there was a black tarp in front of the, outside on the street. It went halfway into, the street, from the sidewalk to the street. And I looked and I said, oh my God, they had mucho weapons, big guns, ammunition, everything. And I thought, I should cross the street because this is weird. I don't feel comfortable. And which we didn't do. We walked through it in the field, and as we walked through, 2 cops looked at us, and they were hustling, and they were on their cell phone. But what I thought it was like a showcase for guns and ammunition that could be bought. Now, that was no, really, that's what I thought. And the police were acting weird. It was all kinds of guns that just, I'm just so frustrated right now. I don't know what to do. I don't vote. The last time I voted was for Barack. I was an idiot. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And then,
well, it's not like we had much of a choice. I mean, with Obama and McCain, and that's.
Okay, Michael, thank you very much. I listen to your program every day, and I want to say I hope we have hope for America. But it's looking dimmer and darker every day. But
it really does. But something, I think what's going to happen is the American people who are desperately clinging to this illusion of a nation of justice and laws just got the ICE challenge right in the face. And
right, if they do some crazy shit to Trump, excuse my language.
Yeah, please.
If they do some crazy at the convention, then that will. I would hope. I don't want it to go down like that, but I would really hope that it would be a knock over everybody's head that says, "Why even have these elections? What's the point?"
Well, the elections are a theater pageant that's put on to convince us we still have some say in the running of this nation. But it's become very apparent, especially this primary season, that no, it's all a sham. So that when the new rulers are anointed, we will sit there and do as we're told, because somehow or other, we're told the majority of us voted for this disaster. More war, more poverty, more spying, more dictatorship.
Yeah. Okay, Michael, thank you very much. I appreciate you every single day. Keep up the good work, and adios, amigo.
Thank you very much. We're going to switch over to George in Texas. George, aloha. What's on your mind?
Well, how you doing, Michael? Hope you enjoyed your 4th of July weekend.
I did. We had a ringside seat to the Navy's fireworks show over Pearl Harbor last night, and it was pretty spectacular.
Well, anyway, looking at how the FBI and the, first thing, I think why they're not pursuing charges with Hillary Clinton, there's a thing is about being a president, I think, that people don't realize. You can delegate authority, but you can't delegate responsibility, because if this thing were to really go to trial, Barack Obama would be implicated in this too.
Absolutely. I mean, we already know that he knew Hillary was using a private email server, and he failed to take action. And, they're all caught up in this thing, and that's why they're all circling the wagons, trying to preserve what's left of their careers. But I think all they've succeeded in doing is angering and energizing the opposition to Hillary's campaign.
Well, but anyway, the thing is, seeing what happened to Hillary, I think we got to apologize. Not only Richard Petraeus, but also Richard Nixon, and even the Rosenbergs, who were put to death for selling secrets to the Soviets.
Absolutely.
I mean, they did far less, and they got executed, and Hillary did far more than what the Rosenbergs did.
Yeah, we don't know the scale of what she did, but again, one really strong motive for Director Comey to try and call a halt to all investigations is, if I am right, and Hillary was selling U.S. secrets through that weak email server and using her foundation to collect and launder the payments, that's a scandal that could bring the entire government crashing down. Okay?
Well, that wouldn't be a bad thing.
At this point, I'm willing to consider it as an option. George, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. Back with more phone calls after these few words. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to the show. And I just got a bit of a challenge in the email. we need to come up with a new explanation of what the letters FBI really mean. And so this listener is just saying, yeah, let's throw that open. If you've got a good explanation for what FBI means, you need to send it on in, and we'll just pick the winners and put it up there. I had Foolish Bumbling Idiots. This person sent in Funny Business Incorporated. So let your imaginations have free reign right now as to the real meaning of FBI. Okay, let's see. We're going to go to Alex in Texas. Aloha, Alex. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I hope you had a good 4th of July weekend.
I did.
I wanted to ask you a question regarding this whole Hillary situation. And this is because I know that I live in San Antonio and there's 5 military bases here, so it's highly improbable that you will not know someone in the military. And sometimes you get to know these people who are colonels and majors and whatnot, and they you know, in confidence they tell you that they would refuse orders by someone like Hillary Clinton. And I'm asking myself, like, is this how they're going to break America up? Is this how it's going to go down? Is this why it's going this way? Because the object of it all is to break up this country?
Well, I don't think the object is to break up this country. In fact, there's a new push to create the North American Union. And I think, again, the globalists still want a one-world government, one-world private central bank to which we will all be slaves. And I don't think they've given up on that. What we are seeing, of course, is that all of the economies of the earth have to be crushed down to the lowest common denominator before they can start dropping those borders. Because otherwise people will be moving to the better places from the not-so-good places, so they have to make everything equally not so good, so there really isn't a reason to leave home.
Oh, okay. Understandable. And that makes a whole lot more sense than you know. But what happens to our military prowess? I mean, I mean, obviously you have private military contractors that work for, you know, wealth benefits or compensation in gold and whatnot. But then there are the other patriotic side of things. And those people outnumber, and we're highly well armed in this nation. So I mean, this just seems like an impossible task for them to take on.
Well, again, I would like to avoid any kind of bloody direct confrontation on the streets of America. And right now, the government is trying to justify declaring all military veterans mentally ill to take the guns away from them because they do represent an already trained up force. How effective that will be in the event of a confrontation, I really don't know, because you'll have people who still have guns will be sharing them with those experienced veterans. But
Mike, what you say all the time is true. You know, if they don't control the ground, they can't control the country. I mean, and you're talking about controlling the entire earth. There's not enough. I mean, unless they have this robotic army somewhere, which I don't put it past anybody, you know, nowadays with all the things that we found out, especially, you know, through the Panama Papers and whatnot, you know.
Okay, well, Alex, I'm sorry to cut you off, but we're coming up on a commercial break here. Let me respond to that. Okay, you are correct. The government has never had enough military people to control the population. They control the population with illusion, lies, fraud, and deception, so that you will do what they want you to do and think it's of your own free will. That's how they have been controlling the population. Once that illusion is shattered, once people understand it's all been a gigantic hoax, things are going to start falling apart pretty quick.
Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate your time, and God bless you, and be well.
All right, well, thank you very much here. We're coming up on another commercial break. We still have another phone call waiting that we'll take as soon as we come back from these words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show, and the suggestions for what FBI actually stands for are pouring on in, and I'm going to be posting them in the Reader's letters page following the conclusion of today's show. Let's go back to the phones. Donna in New Mexico, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. How are you?
Fine.
I have a new title for the FBI director.
Oh, good. Keep it clean.
It's clean. FBI Director Comatose.
I like that one. I like that one.
I just want to say that, the Internet's on fire today, as we obviously know. Everyone's on top of this. Nobody is buying this story. Everyone's connecting the dots, how quickly all this came down between the attorney, between Lynch meeting with Clinton on the tarmac, and then the FBI clearing her before they even had time to read the report or come down to any conclusions. Boom, boom, boom. And now I watched Obama with Clinton, and it's clear they despise each other. Their body language just speaks volumes about that. But as I was watching Obama in North Carolina, he went from being the what I call the, I hope this doesn't come out the wrong way. He always speaks in a white, what we call a white kind of, tone. And he like Hillary, he adjusts his dialect to fit his audience. And all of a sudden he was talking like somebody I'd never even heard before, trying to affect, I don't know. It's just crazy. It's crazy, all this stuff that's going on. Nobody I know believes any of this stuff. Both of the, if he's the liar in chief, what is she going to be?
Oh, much, much worse.
Mm-hmm.
Much, much worse. No question about it.
That's really all I had to say. It's just so obvious. It's in our faces. And, it's very scary.
It is very scary. It's a very, very, very dark time here. All righty. Well, listen, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. Now, I want to mention a name here, and it's Brian Nishimura. And he was found guilty of violating Title 18, Section 793. And what he did was he copied information off of the secure networks that are not connected to the general Internet, and he put them on his own portable device, which Director Comey said Hillary had done. And Nishimura got 2 years of probation, a $7,500 fine, forfeiture of all personal media, and a permanent ban on ever holding a security clearance again. Now, Nishimura was a naval reservist deployed to Afghanistan in 2007-2008. And in his role as a regional engineer for the U.S. military in Afghanistan, he had access to classified briefings and digital records that can only be viewed on the secure government networks, but he just copied it onto his own. And by the way, under the rules, when Hillary Clinton stopped being Secretary of State, all classified documents were to be returned to their originating agencies. And yet, when the FBI examined her server, they found they were still there, long after she had lost the authorization to be in possession of them. And Comey admitted that as well. And Hillary gets a get-out-of-jail-free card, while Nishimura, got probation and a fine and a ban on ever holding a security clearance again. Now, there are other scandals that are starting to loom. And apparently, during her deposition, Huma Abedin admitted Hillary Clinton was burning the daily State Department schedules, putting them in a burn bag for destruction. Those records are required to be kept. They're under the federal records rule, and they are kept to basically have a diary of who was meeting who at what time. And Huma Abedin was saying Hillary Clinton was burning this stuff. Hillary Clinton was clearly much more concerned with her privacy and security than that of the nation itself. And even Richard Nixon knew better than to destroy the tapes. But Hillary deleted those 30,000 emails, and Comey admitted some of those 30,000 emails were not personal, private to Hillary Clinton. They were State Department work-related emails that should have been turned over to the investigators and were not. Comey came on out and laid a case for Hillary being charged and then said, but we're not going to charge her. Talk about the arrogance of power. We're seeing all these articles coming out on places like Blacklisted News, the Clinton crime mafia back in full force. and talking, again, you need to look at the Clintons' history, all of it, all the way back to Little Rock, Arkansas, to understand what an absolute disaster it will be for the United States of America if Hillary Clinton is allowed to steal that Oval Office. Now, there's a building movement within the Democrats to force the issue of fraud in the primaries. There's already talk about Occupy the DNC. They're expecting huge crowds around the Wells Fargo Center. Same thing's happening over on the GOP side in anticipation of an attempt to kick Donald Trump out. And the police are already saying, we're just going to be doing mass arrests. If you're there and we don't want you to be there, you're going to get arrested, locked up in a cage somewhere. This is going to be a very, very violent convention season. Now, there's another article over at Brass Check TV. There is yet another lawsuit that's been filed regarding primary fraud in California. The lawsuit seeks to block the certification of the election based on the very simple fact of all those uncounted provisional ballots, and there are more of those uncounted ballots than votes for Hillary. Now, legally, the only time provisional ballots are not counted is when there are too few of them to affect the final outcome. In this case, we've got the reverse situation. Those provisional ballots could easily put Bernie Sanders into the lead, and they're just refusing to count them. And so this latest lawsuit is, if these ballots are not counted, then the election cannot be certified. We're starting to see hashtag Hillary cheated all over social media. And basically there's a growing awareness. Hillary Clinton stole the nomination away from Bernie Sanders with massive election fraud, by purchasing the superdelegates, by colluding with the corporate news media. That came out in one of the released emails, hacked from the DNC server. And supporters of Bernie Sanders have now filed a lawsuit against the Democratic National Committee and its chair, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, for fraud and negligence during the primaries. Under DNC rules, the Democratic National Committee and the chairperson are supposed to remain unbiased and objective and let the people choose the nominee. This primary season, they weren't even trying to hide the fact. They were Hillary supporters going in, coming out, up and down, back and forth. And they're not supposed to do that by their own rules. And if we have a candidate that willing to break all the rules and ignore all the laws, we do not dare allow that person the power of the Oval Office. Hillary Clinton as president is going to make Richard Nixon look like a choir boy. And there's now a new documentary out called Uncounted, talking about that California primary and how all these people who wanted to vote for Bernie Sanders, who got caught in the non-declared party, and they were all given provisional ballots, and the actual instruction manual to the poll workers was literally telling the people, don't offer crossover ballots, just give them provisional ballots. And then the provisional ballots simply were not counted. And there's a documentary out about that. Okay, now let's take another phone call. Jason in Massachusetts. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I can hear the passion in your voice, Michael. You and I have spoken, I believe. I've called in 2 times over the last week and a half since I've become a dedicated fan, and suffice it to say, you're a little agitated. I can hear it in your voice.
Well, like I said, I was expecting this to happen, but I'm still very annoyed about it. Yeah.
Y'all were. Okay, so my point is this. I usually call up and just give my normal talking points because I know that those talking points are going to speak directly to what I not only want to call, excuse me, hold on. Sorry, my phone just went crazy. Am I still on the air?
You're still on the air.
Okay, sorry for that blip. Anyway, I'll get to the point. I normally come up with my talking points that are directly designed for your audience, which is my people and your people and Dr. Bill Deagle and Stat Miller and everyone else on the station. You guys get it, okay? So I want to make a little bit of a different point today, and I'm going to speak slowly, and I am a ranter, as you know. so please interrupt and interject accordingly. The first coup d'etat that happened in the United States, the first communist revolution, happened in 1933 when they organized our own bankruptcy. Am I correct in that assessment?
Well, it's a little more complex than to say it was a communist revolution. It was a confluence. Actually, it was more of a fascist revolution because the bankers were trying to force a system back under their control, the way the first and second banks of the United States had done. And you need to understand from both a political and economic point of view, communism and fascism are exact opposite ends of the spectrum. So what happened in 1933, the coup against Roosevelt was clearly fascistic in nature.
Correct. Okay. So I worded that a little bit differently than I wanted to for radio purposes. I'll move on to point 2, and then my end point will be point 3. The hard coup d'etat came with the assassination of JFK. And that accomplished two things, it accomplished a lot of things, but it accomplished two major things for the globalists. One, they were able to do their first really big traumatic mind control event because everyone, I wasn't born then, but everyone remembers where they were when JFK was assassinated, and there were always the clouds of conspiracies and this and that. At this point, we all know to a certain degree what happened, but we know that it was dirty. And that was the hard coup d'etat. And then you get the Bush seniors, and, Reagan was, I liked a lot of what Reagan did, but Reagan was controlled. So I don't want to hog time, so let me get to the third point. They're doing the third hard push now. If we have people like Hillary Clinton getting away with things like this, and Bill, all of them, after all of this garbage, after all these years, and if the American public has been so anesthetized to the fact that they can't see and they're victims, I'm not blaming them. All I'm saying to you right now on the air is that they're poisoning us for either 1, total slavery, or 2, a revolution. And that revolution is represented by Donald Trump. I support him 1,000%. So,
well, here's the problem. We're already slaves, and thinking back to yesterday being Independence Day, one of the major issues that led to the American Revolution was taxation without representation. And now we are learning that in point of fact, our votes don't matter anymore. We've been completely disenfranchised. It's a bunch of people inside this club that hand the throne back and forth between the Bushes and the Clintons, and they're not listening to us in how our money should be spent. So we're right back in that situation of taxation without representation.
Correct. And that's why I am someone who's 32 years old, and, I'm pretty well versed in social media. No one is voting for Hillary Clinton. There are these things called, and I would encourage your listeners, I don't know if they go on YouTube. Hopefully they don't watch television. That would, and most of them I'm sure don't. Mm-hmm. But I watch all of my Trump rallies on live feeds on YouTube, and there are things, chat rooms, like rapid. Are you familiar with this, Michael? Yeah,
I am. And those chat rooms, of course, get loaded up with, hired posters. We saw that this morning on Reddit, where as soon as Comey came on out there, all of the channels there were out there saying, well, see, Hillary was innocent. And no, that's not what Director Comey said. He listed all the things she was guilty of and then just said, we're not going to prosecute.
Exactly, because there is certainly internal influence, to say the least. And I know I'm on public radio, so I'm going to be nice in the way I say it, but at the very least, there is internal influence. The reason that is not that these people are getting away with it. Of course I'm angry, and we are all angry, and you're angry.
Yes.
That they're getting away with it. But it's the complacency of the general public. But then when you know what I know, when you look at all the chemtrails and the GMOs and the public education, everything has been taken over incrementally over decades. We've been cultivated like cows, and I
That's
really
exactly
hope,
right. That's exactly right.
Now,
That was the theme in that video we did I can't even remember the name of the video. I did it to one of Claire's music about Under the New World Order is what it was called. And that was exactly the point. We're all being treated like we're livestock. You will eat this food, you will not eat that food. You will have this medication, you will not have that medication. You will go here, you will do as you're told. We're going to harvest wealth and new workers and soldiers from you. And that's how they're treating us.
I would love to get the rest of your comments off the air, but could I hang on with your producer and give him my email so that he could send me that video link directly?
Well, if you can contact me through the WRH at WhatReallyHappened.com, and I'll send you the link. It's up on YouTube. It's easy enough to find. But we're going to let you go here because we're running out of time, and we've got a whole line of phone calls to get through, and we're going to go to Paul in Montana, and I'm probably going to have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Go ahead.
You're on the air.
Are you there?
Yes.
I can see you, but I can't hear you.
Okay, well, you're on the air, and I guess there's an issue with the phone line.
I'll make it really quick. Bolsheviks. The Rothschilds sent the Bolsheviks into Tsar Nicholas. How many times have they done it since then? And is the same thing happening now? Wave two fingers if you heard me. And
okay, what's going on here? You will find some of the greediest people on earth supporting socialism, because if everybody is driven down to a common level of poverty, that means there is more wealth out there for the money junkies to take. And that's what motivates them all. Paul, we're going to let you go here. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones here. Ralph in New York. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Ralph, are you there?
Just wanted to fight a few styles.
Ralph, are you there? Okay, we're going to leave Ralph, and we're going to go over to Al in Delaware. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. First of all, I've called in your show previously. Thank you for having me on as a guest, calling guest. I'm a Homeland Security expert here in the state of Delaware, and I've been watching all these things unfold very carefully. And I honestly think that we're on the edge of a system-sanctioned false flag operation to get the American people to forget about what criminal acts Hillary has created. If you can remember, we don't have to look too far into the distant past to find out that these things actually happen when the system gets in a pinch. The last time that President Clinton was in a little bit of a legal pinch, what happened? Oklahoma City. The last time that the news reported that President Obama gave ISIS weapons in Syria, in clear violation of all federal laws and everything else, what happened the very next day? We had a alleged shooting in Oregon. So
yes.
I honestly think that we are very close to something the system may greenlight in the coming days.
Yeah, to take the media focus off the fact that Hillary got a get-out-of-jail-free card. I remember when Monica Lewinsky was testifying before Congress about that whole mess, and she walked out expecting to be met by the media, but Bill Clinton had launched cruise missile attacks into a couple of Middle Eastern countries, supposedly to target biological weapons labs, which turned out to be an aspirin factory, and the American taxpayer not only paid for those million-a-shot cruise missiles, they had to pay to replace that aspirin factory.
Right, exactly. So I think everyone needs to have their eyes and their ears open that, first of all, the American government is sponsoring terror domestically and abroad. And even if it's here domestically, it might even be a false flag, which does not really actually happen like Sandy Hook, or it could actually be a real one. So there needs to be a distinction in the minds of the American people. People need to wake up and see what's going on.
Yeah,
that's all my comment.
Well, thank you very much for the comment, and we're going to let you go here, but you're absolutely right. Anytime there's a political disaster, the U.S. shifts the attention. Remember the Beirut bombing? And 24 hours later, the U.S. invaded Grenada, changed the focus, changed the story. And yes, given the public outrage over Director Comey's announcement this morning, the media is going to need a distraction. And, that's a recurring pattern that we're seeing. All righty, let's see. We're going to start with Dustin in New Jersey. I'm probably going to have to take you through the station identification. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Those who make the rules rule. Nothing's going to happen to Hillary. People need to... This is an oligarchy. Nothing's going to happen to her. Nothing happened to Bush about lying about Iraq, covering up 9/11. This is an oligarchy, people. When are you going to realize that? Nothing will happen because these people make the laws. Those who make the laws break the law. That's the way it is, and people need to wake up about that, period.
You're absolutely right about that, and we've got more information on that same topic as we get back to hour number 2. Dustin, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, there's yet another scandal looming on the horizon, this one involving that Clinton Foundation. Because Norway has now gone public, saying that although the official public records of the Clinton Foundation show that Norway donated $25 million, in reality, they donated almost $90 million, which means a huge amount of money just vanished into that Clinton Foundation without a trace. And Norway's kicking up a bit of a fuss about that as they pursue corruption charges within their own government. Now, earlier today, Fox News was saying that Hillary's lead over Donald Trump has shrunk to 6 percentage points. Well, I don't know who they're talking to, but the latest Rasmussen report has Trump with 43% of the vote, Clinton only 39%. There's a clear trend. And I think that we're probably going to see Hillary's numbers take a sharp dip because of Director Comey's announcement. Nobody's buying the fact that she's innocent. What they're seeing is another indications of cover-up, and we've had enough of that. Now, amazingly enough, over at the American Thinker, they ran yet another article trying to explain why it's okay for Ted Cruz to be the President of the United States of America. And the headline read, Natural-Born Citizenship, it's not where you are born, but how. And they lead off with this idea that John McCain was born in the Canal Zone, but the Canal Zone was a U.S. territory. And they're pushing this idea that Ted Cruz is a natural-born U.S. citizen because his mother was from Delaware. And if they're pushing this nonsense again, it means Ted Cruz is going to make a play at that GOP convention. And Hillary would absolutely love to see that happen because she can steamroller over Ted Cruz easy as all get out. And what this article at the American Thinker, and I think they ought to rethink their name, because they weren't thinking. Ted Cruz's father was still married to his previous wife when Ted Cruz was born. He was born out of wedlock. And under Section 309C of the Immigration and Naturalization Act, he does not qualify for birthright citizenship. Birthright citizenship to American citizens means born within wedlock, not got knocked up in a bar someplace. And we're seeing a lot of angry articles coming on out. This one's over at townhall.com. And the headline says it all. You owe them nothing, not respect, not loyalty, not obedience. Saying it's high time to declare our personal independence from any remnant of obligation to those who spit upon the rule of law. And they're absolutely right. A government that is refusing to comply with its own laws is illegal and illegitimate. This nation was founded on the principle of the rule of law and that everybody in this country was equally subject to the law. From the person baking donuts down at the local supermarket all the way up to the president themselves. Nobody's supposed to be above the law. Or running around like Hillary saying, I am the law. You need to put her in a Judge Dredd outfit. Now, as I mentioned before, yesterday was Independence Day, and a lot of people took stock and realized how much of our independence we've lost. because of our fundamental freedoms that now require official permission to enjoy. The freedom to travel, not if you're on the no-fly list. The right to be self-sustaining. Oh, no, 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 no. You're not allowed to grow food on your own property. You're not allowed to collect rainwater from the sky. You will plug into that corporate-provided infrastructure. Freedom of speech, with all the free speech zones, little cages off to one side where you can say whatever you want, and the government's sure and secure in the knowledge nobody's going to be listening to you. And the fundamental right to choose your own medicines. They're all being taken away from us. We are being treated like we're livestock by people in government. They want to decide for us what we eat, when we eat it, what medicines we take. Even in the face of growing evidence, many of those mandated medicines are actually more dangerous than beneficial. But it makes money, and that makes it okay. It makes money. What's wrong with you people? So 5,000 people died from this medication. Look how much money we made. Look what our stock portfolio is worth. All right, we're going to grab a phone call. John in Barbados. Aloha, John. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Yes, I'm sure that this Comey statement will accrue great credit to America, I don't think. I mean, people, America's becoming the laughingstock around the world.
Yes, it is, unfortunately.
And just, the day before Mr. Comey's statement, WikiLeaks published these emails, thousands and thousands of them.
Well, the problem is WikiLeaks put out emails that were already out in the public record. It's not the stunning revelation that WikiLeaks had implied that it was going to be with all this, encrypted safety file. These are all PDFs that were provided in a previous Freedom of Information Act.
But what we are expecting now, according to what I've been reading between the lines, is that yes, the Russian people or the Russian government will be feeding these emails that were deleted by Mrs. Clinton to WikiLeaks for publication. I don't know when or how.
I don't think so. I don't think so, and I'll tell you why.
Happen.
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's going to happen. I think whoever has the incriminating emails and everybody that Hillary did a special favor for as Secretary of State in exchange for donations to her foundation, they're now in a position to blackmail and control Hillary Clinton. And she is far more valuable to Putin as a controllable U.S. president than the benefit of getting rid of her now and having to deal with Donald Trump, who doesn't owe anything to anybody and can't be blackmailed at all. So Putin is a chess master, and I think Putin looks at Hillary Clinton as somebody he can turn into a tool. And everybody who was part and parcel to any of these crimes and espionage are now able to blackmail Hillary Clinton. And that tells us that if she steals the Oval Office, the American people and what's good for our nation is going to be at the very, very, very bottom of her list of priorities.
The other thing I've been noticing is this Brexit vote, the amount of if you like, pressure being put on to reverse it or ignore the referendum is just unbelievable. Now we get today that Mr. Schultz said we must get rid of the commission and have elected representatives in there, not these appointed reps. So maybe things are moving a little in the EU, but I don't think it matters because Italy now is the poor man of Europe with the banking crisis in Italy could take down the whole European banking system.
Well, Italy is getting ready to defy Brussels in terms of bailing out their own banks. And it's another example of these member states of the European Union realizing that centralized rule up in Brussels is not really working for the benefit of themselves and their country. I think Hungary has scheduled their independence referendum. The globalists are in an absolute sheer panic because their well-made plans for a single global government enslaved to a single global private central bank are coming apart. You're hearing all this talk about how the EU may just arbitrarily declare a European super state, and Article 50 of the EU treaty is just going to be thrown out the window. You will not be allowed to vote yourself independent. And we're seeing all this panicked reaction out there. And I think what caught all of them by surprise was the sheer overwhelming landslide in favor of leave. They really thought they were going to be able to steal this thing, and they came up short.
Well, the other thing that's happening is that the Remain candidate who's standing for the prime ministership, the leader of the Conservative Party, is now in second place.
Yes.
A Brexiteer is now leading the race to become Prime Minister of Britain.
Yeah, I mean, the people are out there. They understand what's going on, and the EU really destroyed itself, first of all, by having that predatory European Central Bank, and second, with this globalist, we're going to flood the whole world with refugees and blur everybody together into one formless mass of humanity with no sense of who they are to make them easier to control. And it blew up in their faces, and this goes all the way back to the fact that the entire liberal political doctrine is based on a hoax. This idea that you can control what's in a person's mind by controlling the environment, and it goes all the way back to Margaret Mead and her book Coming of Age in Samoa, which has been completely discredited. She made tons of factual errors in that book, and yet she's still lionized by the liberal establishment, and they do all their policies based on this model that all of us can have our minds changed by changing the environment around us. You know, by taking down pictures of white guys and putting up pictures of gays and minorities and women, that we're all going to immediately switch over to say, oh yeah, these are the leaders of our society. And people just aren't like that. And that's why this is blown up so bad in their face. They were basically raising on a busted flush.
I have a final comment. Although it's not being published, generally, France is a basket case. There's virtually a general strike.
Yes.
The unions have rejected everything that the government has put forward. And Holland, I don't think, is going to survive much longer.
I don't think so. I mean, they're getting ready to ram that labor reform package through Parliament without even bothering to take a vote, because nobody in the Parliament wants to be on record as having voted for it. So they're using some technicality. Meanwhile, there are millions of people in the streets of France. If you hunt down the photos, I mean, the Western media is ignoring this totally. They're concerned it might give all of you American slaves uppity ideas about independence and freedom. But these are huge, huge crowds. It almost looks like the Egyptian revolution that toppled Mubarak. I mean, these are millions of people all across France, and they're very, very angry. And they're sick and tired of dictatorship. They're sick and tired of limits on their freedom of speech. They're sick and tired of constantly being propagandized about how much they have to love Israel. They're fed up. We could see a new French Revolution.
It's almost there, Michael, because people are just not going to work. The whole economy of France is getting hammered.
Like I said, the problem with the European Union, it was built with a built-in self-destruct device called that European Central Bank. Anyway, John, I need to let you go. We got another caller on the line. We're going to switch over to Ralph in New York. Aloha, Ralph. Welcome back. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. How you doing? I just came back from an economic conference in Austin, Texas, concerning entrepreneurship and business ownership. And they say that Texas will be the next Brexit, next to England. Is that possible?
Well, there's certainly a lot of talk about that. We know the governor of Texas kind of hinted that he wouldn't be strongly opposed to that. We talked about that when we had Leon Sue on the show last week, talking about a Hawaxit and the fact that Hawaii's statehood is actually illegal. And so there's more and more talk about time to get away from these big imperial governments that do nothing but suck wealth out of the pockets of the people and spend it on themselves and their cronies.
Right. Yeah. Well, there was just saying, there was about 1,500 people in an economic conference, like New Yorkers and Californians looking to escape their states because of high taxes and looking for better entrepreneurship. They're saying Texas is the best move. It's amazing because, I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know. What's your opinion on this?
Well, my opinion is every state's going to have to make their own decision, but I think what we're seeing is a general growing of discontent with this whole idea of a central government that has basically broken free of the constitutional limits. And to a lot of people, that seems to imply that the government has gone illegal. The government is now illegitimate. And as that other article was saying, why do we go on thinking that we have any obligation to listen to this government, obey it, pay its bills, and certainly to sacrifice the life and limb of our children in more wars of conquest?
Right. And one last thing, how important is a credit rating or a credit score in the time of economic collapse? Is that very important, or it won't mean anything to the bankers or the elites?
Well, that's what got everybody into that subprime mess where they started to say, well, we're going to go ahead and loan money to people that don't have good credit scores because we need to keep on loaning money in order to create new money and keep the Ponzi scheme going. And we're going to see more and more mistakes like that. It looks like they've done a repeat of the 2008 real estate froth up, and now those numbers are starting to collapse. We could see another implosion of the real estate sector and all the derivatives come crashing too. The problem with private central banking and debt-based currency is it cannot be made to operate perpetually. It's a naturally unstable system. And even the IMF is now out there saying, maybe this wasn't such a good idea.
Exactly. So do you think this will be the last election, or do you see actually martial law, or basically are we going back to the days of feudalism again? Do you see that coming?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's a neo-feudalist attitude among all the fascists where they want to own everything, and we spend our lives working just for their permission to live and do whatever we're doing. They definitely want that. Feudalism was a fascistic system. And as far as last election, if Hillary steals the White House, she's not going to want to let it go. And from her comments on globalism, it is clear that she is going to support the creation of the New World Order, and she wants that golden throne of planet Earth for herself.
Do you see civil war coming down the road if this happens?
I would hope not. I really don't want to see it happen. The wrong people get killed and crippled in these things. But I can understand why one may be on the way. But just for the record, I'm opposed to it. I'm preferring a more Gandhi-esque approach to the problem. We may need to do general strikes. We may need to just sit down and refuse to go to work, to fill out the forms, to do all the things that government requires us to do. It may be time to just say we quit the system.
Well, you see President Obama out there with Hillary out there campaigning in North Carolina right now. So you see that happening.
Well, I turned it off. I can't stand to look at either one of them anymore.
It's ridiculous. Hey, Mike, thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go here. Now, getting on to the war zones, as you know, not too long ago, the United States deployed 2 aircraft carriers to the Mediterranean in an attempt to provoke Russia. Russia has now responded by sending one of their first-line carriers down to the Mediterranean. Somebody makes a mistake, the shooting is going to start. NATO is doubling its border force on the border with Russia, daring Russia to respond. But we're all supposed to believe that this is all somehow Russia's fault. Canada is sending 1,000 troops to Eastern Europe to boost the NATO presence on Russia's doorstep. But Russia's the aggressor. You don't see Russian troops on Canada's border, do you? That's just something to keep in mind here. You don't see Russia's warships and airplanes flying around Canada's borders, threatening them. We know who the aggressor is. All right, let's grab a quick phone call. Jerry in Chicago, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Thanks a lot for taking my call. I wanted to comment. You had a caller at the end of the last hour talking about an oligarchy. And I got to be honest with you. I've been saying this since I was at the age of driving, which was about 16, 17, that the people who uphold the law, the police, the people that judiciate over the law, which are the judges, and the politicians who write the law are not privy to the same laws.
Well, they're supposed to be underneath our system. We understand they are not. We've seen the rise of a new noble class within our midst of people who will not be prosecuted for the same crimes other people commit, whether it's too much money, too much stardom, too much political pull. And Comey just basically announced to the world that the American justice system is not just. It plays favorites. It protects its own. We're living in a dictatorship. We got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the phone call, Jerry. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, up in Ukraine, the Ukrainian people have had just about all they can take from their U.S.-installed puppet ruler. And they're now demanding, in fact, they've started a petition, demanding Poroshenko dissolve the parliament because the deputies are robbing the country absolutely blind. And Ukraine has a petition system where if enough people sign the petition, they are required by law to respond. Same system we have here in the United States at the White House, although all too often the response is, we heard you and we're going to do nothing. Now, last we were talking about this very strange incident where there was an ISIS convoy retreating from Fallujah towards Syria, and the Iraqis wanted to go on in and bomb it. The U.S. forces refused to do it, saying the weather was bad. Then when the Iraqis sent in their F-16, the U.S. warplanes showed up and protected the convoy. Apparently the weather wasn't too bad for that. So the Iraqis went in with helicopters and basically finished the job. Now word is coming out that the real reason the United States refused to bomb the ISIS convoy is because it was filled with CIA advisors who have been training ISIS. And they wanted those CIA advisors to escape, which they didn't. John McCain is out there saying that we cannot cut troops in Afghanistan. We need to keep them there. We've got to preserve the flow of oil. We've got to preserve the flow of opium. More cuts will lead to another nightmare. We're in a nightmare. We can't wake up from it. But John, if you really feel that way, here's your rifle. Here's your parachute. Here's a day-glow orange jumpsuit left over from the CIA's torture centers. Watch your head climbing into that transport, and we'll call Afghanistan and tell them you are on your way to kick their butts all by yourself. Now, China has issued a statement in the wake of recent saber rattling and that horrible tragedy where a training missile fired by Taiwan blew up a Chinese fishing boat, and basically saying they're still eager in finding a peaceful solution to what's going on here. And China's position is those islands in the South China Sea have always belonged to China, going all the way back to the Cairo Convention, which the United States government signed recognizing those islands as Chinese territory. But we know how desperate the U.S. government is to get into a war with Russia and or China, because they're afraid of that ruble. They're afraid of the yuan, especially now that the yuan is partly backed in gold. And the only way they can keep the world using the U.S. dollar for global trade and banking is to destroy all competing systems. And that is what underlies all of these wars. All the bloodshed, the death, the destruction, the torture, the war crimes is all about an argument over whose particular brand of ink and paper everybody is supposed to use for the next 100 years. Now, turning to Europe, interesting article out of RINF.com. Europe under the Atlanticist thumb, free trade and free migration are destroying nations. And first of all, free trade is anything but. It's restrictive trade. It's a modern incarnation of mercantilism. You will sell this product over here. You will buy that product over there. It's not really free trade. As Bill Still said, if trade was free, why do you need an agreement? But the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership and the Trans-Pacific Partnership is an attempt by the United States government to lock the economic system of the world in a way that favors U.S. corporations, that basically revives and reinforces the Bretton Woods Agreement. Now, Nigel Farage has stepped down as head of the UKIP party, His public statement was that he wanted more time for himself and his family, and he's accomplished his goal of getting the Brexit through there. Other sources are saying that he has been dealing with threats, not just against his life, but against his daughters. And so he may be stepping down there. And, well, more about this when we come back from these commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And before we go back to the phones here, I just got a media advisory from Judicial Watch. And basically, Judicial Watch President Tom Filton will have 2 appearances on the Fox networks today at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, which I guess is coming up almost imminently. And then Fox and Friends on Wednesday at 5 a.m. Eastern Time to discuss Director Comey's basically handing Hillary Clinton a get-out-of-jail-free card. All right, we're going to go back to the phones here. John in Southern California. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael, you got a great show, as always, and I just wanted to ask you to consider just doing one extra thing. Actually, it's not extra, because you already do it quite often with most of your stories. You cite a source, but the one you did was the one I was really interested in a few minutes ago when you were talking about the CIA convoy under ISIS protection coming out of Fallujah. Can you tell me where you got that story, please? Was it blacklisted news or one of those?
Let's see. It's on the main page. Hang on. Let me just look. It is on the main page. Okay.
Your main page?
It's on main. Okay, and it's basically from The Ugly Truth.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, thanks a lot, Michael. I didn't mean any criticism. You do a pretty good job of telling people where you got stuff. So thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks an awful lot here, and that is clearing the phone lines. Now, as you're probably already aware, there has been a huge campaign mounted to oust Jeremy Corbyn from the leadership of Britain's Labour Party. And the reason that this appears to be happening right at this particular moment is because this is the week they're finally going to release that Chilcot report into the war in Iraq. And Corbyn has been very public about saying Tony Blair needs to face war crimes charges for lying Great Britain into that war. Now we have another article, this is out of Blacklisted News, where a top-ranking military officer, the head of the Royal Navy, Admiral Lord West, is saying that Tony Blair was planning to go into Iraq even before the UN resolution. Remember where it came out with the Downing Street memo? The decision to go to war had already been made, and they were just fixing the propaganda around that. Now, Peter Osborne is out there saying if Chilcot fails to nail Blair for his lies, it's final proof our democracy is broken. Well, Chilcot's going to have to take second place behind FBI Director Comey on that particular one, proving that our system is broken. But Tony Blair may not have all that much to worry about, because what we are hearing is that the Chilcot report is going to focus primarily on mistakes made during the actual war itself, and is avoiding the question of just how Britain got sent into war in the first place, which is really the more important question. Now, Iceland has now voted to join the boycott on Israeli goods until Palestine is freed from occupation. So it's going to be interesting to see how the U.S. justifies an invasion of Iceland at this particular point. Getting on to the economy here, story coming out of Investment Watch blog. The Social Security Ponzi scheme will be bankrupt in less than 18 years. I don't even give it that much. And you need to understand the reason Social Security is in trouble is back during Bill Clinton's presidency. They looted the cash buildup for the baby boomer retirements, the surge in retirements that were going to hit. And they knew about it, and they raised Social Security taxes to have a huge cash surplus in the Social Security Trust Fund. Bill Clinton took that money, moved it over to the general ledger, and spent it as general revenue. That's where he got his magic budget surplus. by embezzling the retirement money of American workers. And you need to understand something very clear. Okay? That was not the government's money. It was your money placed in trust to the government. The government doesn't have the right to just take that money and spend it on whatever they want. They're supposed to be guarding and marshaling that money for your retirement. And instead, Bill Clinton looted Social Security to make his magic federal budget surplus. And they're not able to put the money back in under the current economic realities. The U.S. government is technically in a state of default to you, the American worker. And it's a strategic, targeted default. They chose to default on you because you can't do anything about it. You can't lower the U.S. government's credit rating. You can't repossess. You can't seize assets. It's just the way it works. U.S. Treasury yields have crashed to new record lows. They're not a good investment anymore. The 10-year rates are now at 1.366%. That's a new record low. There's a Treasury bond bubble out there. Because every time the Federal Reserve creates new money to put into the circulation, to loan into circulation, there's a corresponding Treasury bond that is redeemable in your future slave labor. The problem is, as they drive wages and salaries down, you're not able to pay to redeem those bonds. There aren't enough living Americans, even with all these instant citizens pouring across our borders. Those Treasury bonds cannot be redeemed. Much of them are being bought back by the Federal Reserve using more instantly created money. They're in a corner, and they don't know what to do. Now, here's a very tragic story out of the Sacramento Bee, and it has to do with this woman, Marcia de Oliveira Longanetti, whose son was murdered last year. And she was notified by one of the companies that had loaned Kevin funds to go to college that the fact of his murder is insufficient cause to write off the loan. That she, the mother, is still on the hook for repayment of all that money, even though the son didn't finish college, can't find a job, won't be able to find a job, he's dead. But to a money junkie, that's no excuse. We'll get that money out of somebody. Talk about heartless bankers. You know that old melodrama image of the villain with the top hat and the cape and holding the mortgage? That didn't come out of thin air. That basically came out of the public consciousness of how money lenders like to work and use debt to manipulate people, and how heartless and cruel they can be. Now, Alan Greenspan, interesting guy. Before he was chairman of the Federal Reserve, he was a supporter of gold-backed currencies. Then he got that top job at the Federal Reserve and instantly said, oh, no, this debt-based currency, this is a really swell idea. Now that he's no longer the chairman, he's gone back to being a gold supporter. And he did an interview over at Bloomberg News and said it is time to go back to a gold standard. And he's saying, you have to ask, why do the banks own gold now? Why do they settle their own accounts with each other through gold bullion? Did you know the interest on the national debt is payable to the Federal Reserve in gold? They know that ink and paper stuff is completely and utterly worthless. They don't need more of it. They can print up as much as they want. And this may be signaling gold confiscation from the American people. Okay. So, now then. Apparently, Hillary's goon squad is attacking my website yet again, but it seems to be up at the moment. Somebody called in and said it was bad. Let me take a quick look here. They love to attack the server when I'm on the air because they know I don't have the full attention to be able to deal anything with it. No, it's all up and running. Everything's good. Everything's good. The automated systems seem to be doing their job. All righty, now then. Over in Italy, Renzi is out there saying they're going to defy Brussels over the banking bailout. Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi is going to defy the EU and unilaterally pump billions of euros into the troubled banking system to save it. The European Union is taking the attitude, no. We control the banks. We control the money. You don't do anything like that without our permission. So Italy may be looking at an exit as well. Now, as I mentioned before on the phone call, France is forcing through this labor reform bill, which is just another variation on the theme of austerity. Less rights and money for the workers, more goodies for the bankers. And they're going to push it through Parliament without a vote, because none of the members of Parliament want to be on the record as having voted for this, because you've got literally millions of protesters in the streets all across France protesting against the ruling class. It's getting almost zero coverage in America's corporate media because they don't want you slaves to get uppity ideas about freedom and independence and not being slaves anymore. Okay, the Hungarian president has set a date of October 2nd for their EU referendum. And this is basically a referendum not on independence, it's a referendum on the immigration problem. Should Hungary set their own border standards or not? That one's going to win. That one's going to win. They've had so many problems with these immigrants. You can't bang these two cultures together and not have problems. A leaked German police report has confirmed there's been a major surge in child rapes by migrants in swimming pools, and saying this is an area of concern. Something has to be done. You can't pretend this is not a problem. Apparently, a mob of youths sexually assaulted 35 females at Sweden's Party in the Park festival. And here's where it gets really, really weird. There was a rapist from Somalia, and he was able to avoid deportation for committing rape on the claim that he didn't understand rape is unacceptable behavior in Great Britain. Apparently in Somalia it's perfectly acceptable behavior. And everybody's coming out with little bans, don't touch me. They're putting up posters saying women in bikini are not looking necessarily for sex. And I'll tell you just how out of control this liberal dogma is getting. There was this German politician, left-wing, Selen Goren, national spokeswoman for the left-wing youth movement, was attacked by 3 men last January. She was caught in a playground. She was forced to perform sex acts on her attackers, and she's now admitting she lied to the police about the attacker's nationality because she didn't want to harm the immigration agenda. That's it. This woman got raped, and she lied about who did it for the sake of a political agenda. That's it. Here in the United States of America, there are 925,000 illegals who are ignoring deportation orders, and they're doing it with impunity because funding for enforcement of deportation has been absolutely slashed. It's at an all-time low. And I'm sure they're all registered to vote Democratic in November. And the rush toward the New World Order is continuing. The president of Mexico is now demanding the United States merge with Mexico and Canada to create that North American Union. Now, for that to actually happen, Canada's economy and America's economy has to be brought down to the same level as Mexico's economy. Or alternatively, he just wants an open border so that he can get rid of all the people that don't do well in Mexico and make them the problem of the Canadians and the Americans. Now, as long as we're out there bashing on the FBI and people are still sending in the meaning of FBI, some of them are quite funny. There's been yet another one of these situations where FBI informants, multiple FBI undercover informants, infiltrated Bill Keebler's Patriot Defense Force in Utah and talked Keebler into using explosives against an abandoned Bureau of Land Management facility in Arizona. And they gave him the dummy bomb as well, so that they could get a newspaper headline. There are domestic terrorists out there planning evil things. This is another classic case of the FBI creating the crime out of thin air for newspaper coverage, because that's a lot easier to do than actually go on out and find real criminals and real terrorists or real spies. Director Comey, do you realize if it comes out anywhere in the future that Hillary Clinton was committing espionage, selling secrets on her server, and using her foundation to collect and launder the money, you, Director Comey, are an accessory after the fact. And there's a 10-year statute of limitations on espionage. Now, the FBI apparently has revealed a program. Actually, it was in response to a Freedom of Information Act. The FBI has set as policy the targeting of alternative media journalists, meaning people such as myself, targeted for harassment, disruption, right out of COINTELPRO. They are terrified the American people is finding out what's really been going on in this country. Now, not too long ago, there was this story about this Oakland prostitute who went public with the fact that she'd slept with 32 police officers. And she's saying cops are still calling her for sex. And she's saying that the only reason she went public is a deputy she was involved with ignored her phone calls, wouldn't pick up the phone on her birthday. Heck hath no fury like a woman scorned. Well, the scandal is now spreading because this sexual trysting between the officers and this girl began when she was younger. It's considered pedophilia, and it's now spread to other police departments. The latest Livermore Police were involved with this. All right, we've got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to go to the phones. Lindsay in Georgia. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. I just wanted to let all of your listeners know that what Director Comey did today was a travesty, yes. But what he did was lay out all of the crimes for which she's being charged and for which there was prima facie evidence of her culpability, and is setting the stage for when President Trump takes over this nation, that he will prosecute all of those involved, all of the traitors from the top down, all of them.
Well, all I can say is, first of all, I'd love a job on that team. And second, Trump better have his Kevlar around, because people who get in the way of the Clintons tend to wind up very depressed in Fort Marcy Park or crashing to the ground in small aircraft. And there's already been one incident with Trump's campaign aircraft.
But here's my point about it all. Things have gotten so far out of control, Michael, that if it cannot continue like this. The criminality has become so blatantly obvious that it's terrifying. I mean, you don't even have to be, super intelligent or super sophisticated or have an enormous knowledge base. If you're just a regular, what do they call them, average Joe?
Yes.
Then even you, not you yourself, but one, can see the criminality for what it is now that Director Comey has laid out all the evidence and still refused to avow prosecution. That is the problem. That's what's making everyone so enraged. If he said that there was no basis for prosecution because there was no criminality that was committed that we found, that would be one thing. That would be a lie, of course, but that would be one thing. What Director Comey did was lay out methodically the crimes that were committed prima facie and did nothing to bring justice for those crimes. And that's my point, that people need to focus on the fact that Director Comey knows what's happened and it appears that his hands are tied, which is unacceptable. It's not acceptable Anyway, that's it. There's nothing more to say.
I agree. I mean, he may have been given a direct order by Obama, which would be obstruction of justice. But Comey basically came on out and he reiterated all of the crimes for which we already have the public record that Hillary actually did. And Comey's entire justification to not recommend charges was they didn't find any evidence of ill intent. But Title 18 does not require ill intent. Negligence and carelessness are prosecutable offenses.
I mean, this is insanity, Michael. This is literal insanity, and I think that's what's bothering me more than anything. Is how could this happen so blatantly, obviously, and yet there seems to be no recourse? It is literal insanity. Am I right or wrong?
Well, to those of us who understand what America is supposed to be, yeah, it is insane. The entire system is corrupt from top to bottom, and we have to accept that reality.
I just wanted to say thank you for letting me vent publicly, and hopefully people will be motivated to not just support Mr. Trump, but to let others understand that the real reason that what Director Comey did was so important was because it shows that there really, honestly to God, is one set of laws for the malefactors or the cabal, and there's a completely different set of rules and laws.
Yeah, the elites are above the law. The elites are above the law. That is unacceptable in the United States of America.
It is unacceptable. Thank you, Michael.
All right, we got to take a break for station identification. We'll be back with Hour 3 after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And as a matter of fact, we're going to go ahead and take a phone call now. Matt in Colorado. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. Well, what's on my mind is clearly Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
And the previous caller expressed views that I find similar. And what I'm saying, or rather asking you for advice, is as an American citizen, when blatant corruption is in our faces, I find it highly insulting, and I don't have a recourse of action because voting is rigged and the rule of law no longer exists. And so I'm wondering, what should we do in order to fix it, because it's infuriating?
Well, again, the best thing that all of us can do is speak out about what's going on. And we need to abandon this idea that we're not supposed to talk about certain things out of politeness or political correctness. It's time to stand up and counter Hillary's propaganda machine, and just tell everybody your concerns. Share your concerns with them, and that's what you need to be doing.
With who?
Everybody around you, your family, your coworkers, your fellow students, people you meet on the street. We need to basically get people to own up to the reality that the nation we live in is not what we were brainwashed to think that it is. And basically need to tell them, look, the government is operating illegally, unconstitutionally. It's delegitimized itself. They do not prosecute the elites for crimes they commit. It's just all corrupts, and you need to understand, along with the election fraud, we've been disconnected from the country. We're just here to provide wealth and young bodies.
Michael, I have to say this. So I talk to people about this all the time. I talk to everybody who wants to listen to me. I talk to them on the street. I talk to my friends. I talk to my family. I talk to people at the bar, at the restaurant, wherever. It doesn't do a gosh darn thing, because they are stealing it in broad daylight and laughing in our faces like we are idiots. And it is unacceptable. And talking to people is not, I'm not advocating violence by any means. I'm not a gun owner, but they're going to take our guns because they're going to, not my gun because I don't have any.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is that you talk to people, great. You vote. They rig the election. They just straight up jack it from you. So what can we do as a means of taking back our constitutional rights as American citizens from these demons? I call them demons because they are demons, because they're lying to our faces, and it is pissing me off.
Well, good. It's time for everybody to be getting angry. It's time for everybody to hate corruption and people who are corruptors. it's time to let yourself get angry over all of this stuff that's going on. Now, that being said, like you, I do not support violence. I am still convinced that our current government and economic system are in the process of tearing itself apart like the former Soviet Union. And if we stay calm and don't give the government an excuse to declare martial law and a national emergency, it's going to collapse of its own internal rot. And we're going to have to get through about 4 months of taking care of each other while we form a whole new country based on the original constitutional principles up as far as the 13th Amendment. And that's the best advice I can give you right now.
Okay, so then I have a follow-up question if you got a couple more seconds on air.
Sure.
If we go into martial law, why are that guy, I'm going to refrain from cursing, but that guy who is the head of the FBI who just gave Clinton a free pass, and these people, who in the military has any balls left that is going to step in and say, hey, we will no longer support you while you create or while you, participate in criminal activity against the law. And then, because
that's a good question.
From the hierarchy, who's going to step up and which one is going to say, hey guys, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not going to instruct my military or my police department or my sheriff's department or the local state militia, as it used to be called, and just say, hey, we're going to remove you from office. Are they all just laying down on their backs and just being like,
I don't think so. Now, we know that Obama has been doing a purge of higher-ranking officers, getting rid of ones who might refuse. But as far as the rank and file is concerned, the vast majority of military people that I know, and we got a lot of them around here on Hawaii, they are strict constitutionalists. And talking with them, they are not happy about what's going on. So I would say it's an open question how much dissension in the ranks that we would get, and that may be the reason, one of the reasons, why they're bringing in this flood of people born in other countries who will not hesitate to follow an order saying, shoot the American people and you can move into their house and have their car.
Well, it's totally unacceptable.
You're absolutely right. Anyway, listen, we've got to take a break here for a second to welcome our on-air affiliates back to our network. And I know I forgot to do it in the first 2 hours, but things have been a little bit intense. We missed you guys. Welcome back here. All right, Matt, again, I would seriously like to avoid bloodshed in the streets of America. I understand it's a real possibility, but I'm standing against that. And I'm going to continue to stand against that. If I thought it could work, I'd have the other opinion. But I don't think it's going to work the way that people would like to see it.
I'm a pacifist, and I totally do not advocate violence in any way at all.
All right, well, Matt, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go and switch over to Nancy in California. Aloha, Nancy. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I was just going to say the way that they have pinged and ponged between the Bushes and the Clintons shows me just how weak they really are. If they were so powerful, they wouldn't have to resort to these criminals. And they're resorting to people that have already such a bad reputation that discredit the whole system.
Well, they don't allow anybody who's not corrupt in to spoil the party. That's been the big opposition to Donald Trump. You know, he's coming out of the world of business where you keep your promises. He's not owned by anybody. He's not blackmailable by anybody. I mean, if you look at his early life and his early career, nobody ever called him a misogynist or racist before he started running for office. And then all of a sudden, that's what the media's got. Oh, he's racist. He's this. He's that. And they really don't have anything to gain traction. And Trump's numbers are continuing to climb, and Hillary's numbers are continuing to drop. And we know there's massive election fraud in this country. But as was demonstrated with the Brexit, election fraud cannot reverse a complete landslide. And so what we need to do is, hopefully it's going to be Donald Trump coming out of the GOP convention as the nominee. But whoever it is, we're going to have a landslide vote for that GOP candidate to keep Hillary out of the White House.
Is it true that there was an attempt on his life in Los Angeles?
Yeah, there was this gentleman who has supposedly been identified as an associate of Omar Mateen and John Howell The guy who turned himself in and said, I'm being set up to be a sacrificial lamb for a false flag. And apparently they all trained together at this terrorist training center that's apparently being run by the U.S. government. And what he did is he tried to grab a gun from a security officer and fire at Trump, and he didn't succeed. And far from being just a goofball who got it into his head at the moment, it does look like it was a serious assassination attempt. There's also been one incident where Donald Trump's campaign aircraft developed strange mechanical problems and had to have an emergency landing. Yeah, they're gunning for him, and he knows they are. That's why he's got his own personal security operating inside the Secret Service protective detail.
Well, you've got a great show. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to let you go here, and getting on back to the news. Now, as you are probably aware, California just passed a whole bunch of anti-gun laws. Some of them are pretty ridiculous. You're not allowed to have a collapsing stock on your gun. You're not allowed to have a pistol grip on it. That's deliberately targeting the AR-15, which has an integral pistol grip that cannot be removed. They want to get rid of threaded barrels, which means you can't use a muzzle brake on the gun. And, of course, turn in all your magazines with more than 10 rounds in them. Now, here's the part that you may have missed. The California Senate voted through a separate resolution, 28-8, that exempts California legislators from all these gun laws. The gun laws are to disarm you, the law-abiding citizen. But, politicians, we have to have guns because we're scared of you. The United States was founded on the principle that all laws apply equally to everybody. And we see right here a demonstration where the attitude now is we're passing laws that only affect you and don't inconvenience us because we're the elites, we're the power, we're the corrupt, the chosen, whatever they call themselves at night. Now, there's a federal judge has ruled that the Drug Enforcement Agency has to release information sought by the Hemisphere Project, or rather a privacy group about the Hemisphere Project. This was a program started in 2007 in which the U.S. government was collecting data on nearly 4 billion telephone calls a day. And it was a massive, unconstitutional spying program. But the judge ordered that the corporate colluders who went along with this violation of your privacy, their identities have to be kept secret. Because customers might start canceling their accounts with these treasonous companies. I certainly would. So that's going to be hidden. The companies that willingly betrayed the trust of their customers and their privacy for an unconstitutional, warrantless fishing expedition. And it's getting even worse out there. Over in Virginia, there's a judge who's just passed a ruling that computer users do not have an expectation of privacy. If your device is connected to the internet, then it's no longer private. And basically saying that it's okay for the government to break into your computer whenever they want, because after all, the hackers are doing that. And obviously, this is complete and utter nonsense. Hacking is an illegal activity. There are laws against it. They're not being enforced. But that's the new standard of privacy. If you're connected to the internet, you have no right to privacy. And therefore, the government can break into your machines and spy on you, which is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. It's also a violation of that Fifth Amendment, not the part about self-incrimination. But further on down, if you read to the bottom, it says, your property may not be taken for government use without just compensation. All of these NSA, DEA spying operations are using your hard drive space, your bandwidth, your electricity, your CPU cycles, your memory. Are you receiving just compensation for any of that? I don't think so. Now, Apple has now patented a technology where the cameras inside the iPhones can be remotely disabled. Now, this is being pitched as a means to protect intellectual property rights at concerts. But obviously it also means that if the police don't want cell phones working, for example, at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, they'll have the means to disable the cameras. Good reason to keep your old camera that doesn't have Wi-Fi on it. Now, getting back to the overt purpose of this, I think banning and blocking photos at concerts is going to backfire horribly. The taking of pictures of your favorite band on stage that you waited in line an hour to see after buying an expensive ticket to prove to your friends that you were really there is part of the concert experience. They want to take selfies of themselves with some rock band in the background. And if people can't take and show those pictures, they're not going to bother showing up at the live concerts in the first place, are they? Because the sound quality at a concert is never as good as the studio mix. You go to that live concert for the experience of being at the live concert, for bragging rights to your friends, I was there. And they're going to say, show me, prove that you were there. I can't, I'm sorry, my iPhone wouldn't let me take the picture. I think it's going to backfire on them horribly. We're going to start seeing the gate take at live concerts that uses technology plummet. Now, a little bit of good news from the world of space exploration. Yesterday evening, NASA's Juno spacecraft successfully entered Jupiter's orbit. They were very concerned because of the very hostile environment closer into Jupiter, but they succeeded. It's going to be there, and we're going to be getting all kinds of new, interesting data about Jupiter's atmosphere and what's going on in there. So that was a successful move on that one. Now, here's a bizarre story. Rhode Island Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse recently told a gathering of people in New York City that global warming denial hurts U.S. soldiers in the field. And the main problem with the military is its reluctance to join the climate crusade. Like these soldiers and sailors don't already have enough to worry about with actually fighting wars and now dealing with the transgender issue. We've got to make sure they're on board with the human-caused global warming thing. It's weird. Story coming out of Investment Watch blog, and it's going back to the data on carbon dioxide and temperature. The same graph that Al Gore used to claim that when CO2 went up, warming went up with it. Now, Al Gore flat out lied. Because if you look at the data very closely, you see the warming actually begin first, then it's followed by the carbon dioxide. Which makes sense. A warmer world means more life means more atmospheric carbon dioxide. But there's something else in that chart that you need to pay attention to. The end of each upward shift in CO2 concentration basically leads into the beginning of a serious cooling trend. And remember, we have been talking about how the solar output is at a multi-year low. Scientists are saying it's going to be decreased solar energy for the next 30 years. We're looking at a new Maunder minimum and a new ice age. Mini ice age. Hopefully it's mini. And so all the global warming people are scrambling to hang on to their funding and their credibility. That's why they rebranded from saying global warming to climate change, as if climate change isn't something that happens naturally all the time. So now there's an interesting story that came out of What's Up With That, talking about all the climate scientists who used to be getting huge bucks for screaming about human-caused global warming are now starting to flip back to saying, yeah, we're going into a serious cooling trend now. And that's going to be a real problem for the carbon Nazis, because taxing and restricting carbon dioxide when the Earth is cooling is exactly the wrong thing to do if you believe in the initial claim that carbon dioxide warms the world. which has come under serious challenge from no less than NASA, which came on out and said atmospheric carbon dioxide does not behave like a pane of glass in a greenhouse. It actually acts as an atmospheric coolant by absorbing infrared radiation and re-radiating it back out to space on different frequencies. So they're already flipping back. And remember, we went through the same thing in the 1970s, the coming ice age. They're just selling books and magazines and policies by constantly screaming that doom is just around the corner. And obviously, humanity survived the last mini ice age. It survived the medieval and Roman warming periods. We're a lot more resilient than these hysterics would give us credit for. The idea that if the earth warms a quarter of a degree, we're all going to die screaming horrible deaths. Unless we pay them carbon taxes and do what they tell us to do. That's the situation. All right, got to take a break for commercials. Phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, and the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, there has been a new study by researchers in Denmark and the United Kingdom, and they have been studying antidepressant drugs and their effects, and they have found solid indications, proof. Prescription antidepressants push people to commit suicide, especially children. This is the biggest study ever to have been conducted on antidepressant drugs. The British Medical Journal has endorsed the findings of the study in its editorial column. Now, we've been telling you for quite some time there is a clear link between these medications and bizarre behaviors, suicides, mass violence. All of these mass shooters that are being wagged at us by the gun grabbers were either on or withdrawing from these medications. I have to say almost all, because more recently, the government has started withholding the medical records of these shooters. Because you don't need to know that the medications you're buying might actually be causing this behavior, that we have to blame the guns. We have to blame the guns. It's either ISIS or the guns. We can't blame prescription medications. Those people write really big campaign donations checks. Now, here's a little bit of good news, and I hope it continues to move forward, and I hope that she is held personally liable. The former commissioner of the FDA, Margaret Hamburg, has been hit with a lawsuit in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. And the details are ugly indeed. Basically, Hamburg is being accused of using her position at the FDA to push through approval of a dangerous antibiotic called Levaquin, in which her husband's hedge fund was invested. The hedge fund was deeply seated with Johnson & Johnson, makers of Levaquin, and according to the Daily Caller, both Alkermes and Johnson & Johnson stock value increased significantly during Hamburg's tenure. Now, this drug has led to the deaths of over 5,000 people. But that's just we, the American people, being picky again. So what if 5,000 people died on this medicine? It makes money, and that's all that matters. Now, as you know, on July 1st, Vermont's law mandating GMO labeling was supposed to go into effect. It's been headed off by a bill passed by Congress, which is going to give the FDA 2 whole years to write new rules for GMO labeling, which means no GMO labeling for at least 2 years, probably longer. Now, one of the bills, the Roberts-Stabenow bill, Senate 764, will give the FDA the authority to exclude certain GMO products from mandatory labeling. And according to Natural News, the guidelines as they're coming up, 99% of GMOs currently in the marketplace would be excluded from labeling. It's already out, already done the damage, you don't need to know. That's our fascist government at work, hand in glove with corporate interests. What's good for the people? Not a factor. What's safe and healthy? Could care less. Is it going to make them sick? Yeah, but we'll make more money selling them a cure. And if that cure makes them sick, we'll make even more money selling them another cure for that one. That's how it's played. Now, last week there was a big stink, as it were, about this letter from over 100 Nobel laureates attacking Greenpeace for opposing GMOs in general and GMO golden rice in particular. And their entire argument was, you should listen to us because we're scientists, so there. Now, it's already starting to come out that the so-called golden rice is in fact seriously deficient in key nutrients. And like other GMO crops, it's turning out to be less tolerant of environmental change than the natural varieties. Now, last week, this stunt was found to be linked directly to Monsanto. And what's really interesting is most of these Nobel laureates got their Nobel Prizes for areas of science other than toxicology, agriculture, or risk assessment. It's an absolute bought and paid for bluff. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, China has just completed construction of the world's largest radio telescope. This thing is gigantic. It makes the one down in Arecibo pale in comparison. And it was completed in southwestern China's Guizhou province on Sunday. The last reflectors fitted in. They're going to turn that thing on. And part of its function is going to be the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, listening for radio signals that must be of intelligent origin. Well, that's all well and good. I'm not sure how successful they're going to be because of the evolution of communications right here on Earth. Because we are already entering a stage of history where less and less high-powered broadcasters are in use and more is being carried on cable. Fiber optic cable, copper cable coming into the home. And I can see in perhaps 20 to 30 years that with the exception of air traffic control and police radios, which are low-powered, there won't be any really large signals heading out into space. And so when you look at the entire length of the lifespan of Earth, 4.5 billion years, how long humans have been around here in our current form, which is half, 3/4 of a million years, how long our civilization's been around, 20,000 years, and we're only going to have radio signals, powerful radio signals, broadcasting out into the universe for maybe 100 years. For somebody to intercept our signal, they got to pick not just the right planet, but the right time. I have an alternative suggestion, and I've been researching this with some people, some of whom think it's a really great idea, and others have come back and said that I'm basically smoking opium on this. But instead of trying to listen for an extraterrestrial version of the Kardashians, what we need to listen for is the harmonics in their AC power distribution system. Because any technological civilization is going to discover, as we did, alternating current is far more efficient at transmitting power over long distances than direct current. And alternating current is most efficient in a very narrow range of frequencies, between 50 to maybe 400 hertz. And I understand that radiative power increases with frequency. But we're talking about terawatts of energy coursing through all those long-distance transmission lines. And we're also talking about the fact that the AC hum coming out of those lines is not just confined to the primary format of 50 hertz in Europe or 60 hertz here. There are harmonics at higher frequencies which will have more broadcast power. And I don't think it would take all that much to set up an experiment in that radio-free zone in the eastern United States, just listening for primary, formants, and harmonics in that narrow range of frequencies. And you wouldn't be able to really narrow it down where they were coming from, but it would at least give us confirmation that there are intelligent civilizations out there. Now, you have a lot of people out there like Stephen Hawking, who's saying we shouldn't be broadcasting anyway. We dare not risk these alien civilizations coming on down here. And I know Hollywood has made a lot of money on movies like Independence Day and the new version of that, which apparently isn't doing all that well at the box office. I have a different opinion. What do we have here on Earth that is worth the bother of invading? Now, contrary to low-budget science fiction, where the aliens come on down and step out of the spaceship, and they breathe our air and they drink our water and everything's just fine, you need to understand we are comfortable here on planet Earth because we evolved here. The deep crust microbes in the Earth's crust are very comfortable where they are because that's where they evolved. The fish that swim underneath the Arctic ice in freezing waters are very comfortable there because that's where they evolved. We're going to find life all over the universe comfortable with the environment they evolved in. The odds of their environment exactly matching ours are remote. So what are they going to come down here for? I mean, when you're driving down the highway, do you stop at every anthill you pass? No, you don't. It's just not worth the notice. And civilizations tend to evolve sociologically along with their technology. Any civilization in possession of faster-than-light travel is going to find us just not worth noticing. So what are they going to come down here for? Water? Plenty of water out there in the universe. Oort cloud. Our gold, like they were talking about in, what was that one about the aliens that came down to the gold mining town? It was Harrison Ford and, Cowboys and Aliens. That was the name of that movie and everything. Now again, plenty of gold and other heavy materials out there in space, easier to grab. You don't have to come down to the bottom of gravity well and go back on up. Now, I don't mean to denigrate my home planet, but I just don't see that we have anything that would be of interest to a civilization advanced enough to have faster-than-light travel. And remember, when you're talking about space travel, and you've got a starship going from point A to point B, and Earth is in the middle, to slow down to visit Earth and then speed up to reach your destination doubles the amount of fuel you have to have. And I don't care how advanced an alien civilization is going to be, they're going to have their eye on that gas gauge. So I'm convinced that the universe is filled with life and intelligent civilizations. I just don't think there's really a believable cause for them to come on down here and be harassing truck drivers out on the interstate highways in the middle of the night. And if you study the history of Hollywood's obsession with flying saucers, you find that they line up exactly with the development program for black project aircraft, like the SR-71, the F-117, various other systems. And the reason for that is very simple. So that if somebody's out there in the deserts out in the West, and they see a couple $1 billion worth of taxpayer money flash overhead, what's the first thing they're going to do? I saw an alien spaceship and a flying saucer. And nobody's going to be listening to them. So I wish the Chinese good luck, and I'd like to see absolute verification of intelligent civilizations out there, because I think it would be a socially transformative event. We might just decide to put down our weapons of war that we're killing each other with and unite together to find out who's out there. What wisdom can they share with us? What trade can we engage in? What culture can we share? I think that's the reason back on the Viking missions, when the labeled release experiment came back with a positive result, why NASA threw it away and relied on the now known to have been bogus negative result from the GCMS. Because politicians were afraid of what confirmation of extraterrestrial life might actually mean. to their power structure. And the parallel that I drew in the article I wrote on the subject was when Marco Polo returned from his trips to China. He was promptly thrown in the dungeon by the Dominicans because the church feared awareness of an advanced civilization to the east that hadn't even heard of Jesus would undermine their power and authority. Fortunately, what Marco Polo had seen leaked out, and eventually they had to release him, and the Vatican told Spain and Portugal, go on out and conquer the Eastern empires and make them religious. All righty, let's see. We're going to talk with Andrea in Oklahoma. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Yes, I wanted to see if you'd already spoken about the Gulf, where they all these people went down there over the the holidays here to celebrate the 4th, and there's all through the Gulf they have people that put their foot in the water and drew back blisters all over the feet, and they're saying that it's the flesh-eating disease. And, I mean, blistered up. It's just awful. And then around Florida, they have the bloom where they have all this runoff of, I guess, people that fertilize their yards, as well as they have sewage going into the canals and the ocean there. And it looks like giant sponge, but it's a bloom, and it's suffocating the manatees and things. And it's just, here we are so supposedly ahead of ourselves that we're allowing we're just not taking care of our earth, and it just seems awful considering, I don't know if that's still the Corexit, are they still spraying Corexit in the Gulf, do you know?
No, they're not spraying anymore, but you need to understand the Corexit and the oil didn't disappear. All the Corexit did was change the molecular structure of the oil to make it more dense so it would sink to the bottom. It's still down there. It's all still down there, and it's causing all kinds of problems. Now, when you're talking about blisters, that doesn't sound like flesh-eating bacteria to me. That sounds like a chemical reaction of some kind, a chemical burn. But it is amazing when they're still out there screaming about carbon dioxide and climate change, but as you point out, they're turning a blind eye to the real, very obvious environmental damage that's being caused by this reckless disregard for health and safety, and basically the licensing of these corporations to just go on out and pollute wherever they need to pollute in order to make more money, whether it's the fracking companies or chemical companies. And again, protecting Earth seems to only be a policy when they can use it to collect taxes and obedience from us.
Well, it was just ghastly to take a look at some of the pictures of people coming back in, and they don't get very far out in that water before they start feeling a major burn. So I thought I'd just see if you had discussed that and had seen it, but thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much.
For all you do.
Well, thank you very much for all those kind words. We're going to let you go here. We had read about it. It's on the main page of What Really Happened. We didn't talk about it here because we had a bunch of other stuff going on. But yeah, nature is being thrown out of balance, and it's not due to your plastic bags or your carbon dioxide. It is from industrial pollution that is allowed to happen by a government just looking the other way. And getting on back to that Gulf oil disaster, the reason that turned out to be such a horrible incident was twofold. One, virtually every other oil-producing nation on Earth mandates the use of automatic blowout preventers on their wellheads. In the United States, they don't require that. You have to have a manual blowout preventer. That's one problem. Second of all, the manual blowout preventer on the Deepwater Horizon was 4 years overdue for mandatory maintenance. And the ocean is a harsh environment. Petroleum is a harsh environment. You have to do the maintenance. And that's why when they tried to close that blowout preventer, it jammed. Some of the pipe from lower down literally broke off and was jammed up into that valve opening. And that's why it just kept going and going and going, and they couldn't stop it. It's the sign of neglect by a government that's more interested in helping their corporate friends make money than in actually taking care of this country for future generations. And those future generations are going to be paying that price. Whether it's these toxic algae blooms that are created through chemical runoff, in some cases, the depletion of water of oxygen allows some of these toxic blooms to happen. And we know that methane leaking up from the fracking wells depletes the water of oxygen, because it will combine with the oxygen to produce carbon dioxide, which bubbles off into the atmosphere, annoying Al Gore, and more water molecules. And that's what's behind all of these sudden fish die-offs we're seeing in lakes and ponds and streams all over America, near those fracking sites. And they'll always come out and say, well, the oxygen was depleted from the water, which isn't telling you the whole story, why the oxygen is depleted from the water. And that is an important aspect of the story. We do not have a wise and prudent government in this land. We have a government that is out there to basically take care of itself, aggrandize itself, serve their corporate masters, serve Israel, serve the money junkies on Wall Street, and you're just not a factor anymore. Because after all, they don't need your votes anymore. They just make them up as they go along. So, all right, a couple of stories about religion here. Apparently over in New Jersey, 37-year-old Passaic County priest has been convicted on child luring and endangerment charges stemming from 2013, in which he apparently put a 14-year-old girl on his lap and proceeded to act like he was the TSA with regard to her panties. And he actually did this inside the church. Not a lot of respect there. Now, over in Ireland, there's been another big stink as well, and it has to do with a priest who was used to be known as the singing priest, because he was part of a group headed by another convicted pedophile, Father Michael Cleary. And Anthony Walsh was well known for doing an Elvis impersonation as they toured around trying to lure people into the church. And apparently he's been sentenced to jail for 2 years for abusing a young boy with a crucifix, and I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, but it's pretty nasty stuff. And the judge said he would have sentenced him to a longer period, but that's the maximum the law allows. And I think we're in an age right now where we're beginning to really understand and appreciate people in positions of authority and power are not what they present to the public. We just got that from Director Comey as well. And they're in positions of power, and power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Which again gets back to this story. We dare not allow Hillary to steal that Oval Office based on her track record and the corrupting influence she and her husband Bill have had on our government as a whole. She's going to be a threat not just to the United States of America, but to the whole world as well. These are very dangerous and dark times. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today here, and I'm starting to see pretty much all over the internet articles of intense outrage over Director Comey, basically laying out the crimes Hillary Clinton did commit with the handling of classified data, and then saying we're not going to recommend charges. And they're calling him out on his double standard because of what happened with David Petraeus and Brian Nishimura, who did exactly the same thing that Hillary did. Actually, Hillary did more of it. And Comey basically came on out and said, well, yeah, she did all this stuff and was all reckless and careless, but, no reasonable prosecutor would bring charges. Not if they wanted to not wind up in Fort Marcy Park, I guess. But it is a double standard. And I think anybody who thinks that the American people are going to be gulled by this into thinking that Hillary is innocent, it's going to backfire. This screams cover-up. And it does mean that somebody somewhere is guilty of obstruction of justice. Maybe that's Director Comey. Maybe it's Obama. But between the meeting between Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch in Los Angeles and that voluntary interview with the FBI and Hillary, I think that's where the deals were made. But nobody is buying that this is in any way, shape, or form an exoneration of Hillary Clinton, especially because Comey laid out, validating all the observations we've been made about all the sections of Title 18 that she's violated. Basically came out and said, well, she did all of this, but we have decided we're not going to prosecute. This is a travesty, and the outrage is palpable. People are very angry. They're furious. I'm going to wager a plugged Turkish piastre that Donald Trump's numbers are going to take a major upward leap in the next few days. And I know Hillary's diehard supporters are going to say, oh, she's innocent, she's wonderful, her feces are not odoriferous. But at this point, Hillary Clinton, she's running her campaign as a personality cult. She could go on out and throw a live kitten into a blender on national TV, claim it was to demonstrate the dangers of blenders, and her supporters would still love her. And like those bimbos over on The View, all they can think about is, a woman is president, a woman is president. Ask the people who are being ruled by Ursavat Bathory how wonderful it was to have a woman as president. Ask Patricia Smith. Ask Jennifer Flowers how much of a supporter of women Hillary Clinton is. Look at all the money her foundation took from nations in the Middle East that still practice discrimination against women and genital mutilation, and tell us that Hillary is really a champion for women. Hillary's a champion for Hillary. That's it. There's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. Got to do Jim Goddard's show up there in Vancouver. We'll be back tomorrow, Wednesday, Hump Day, here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Until then, please share what you know with everybody that you know. We have got to build public awareness that Director Comey has obstructed justice, maybe an accessory to espionage. Aloha, America.